I worked night shifts at a small clinic for about 8 months. It was almost a routine for me. I was 32 at the time and thought I was pretty tech-savvy. But those long nights were often lonely and quiet. The clinic sat on the outskirts of town, an old brick building with flickering fluorescent lights. The air was always sterile, thick and heavy, and it made me uneasy. 3 weeks into the job, I was at the front desk when I heard a sound. It was soft but clear, a woman sobbing. I thought maybe it was a patient in one of the exam rooms. I walked over to check, but the room was empty. Only a crumpled tissue lay on the floor. I felt a chill, but I shrugged it off. Maybe I was just tired. Then it started happening regularly. Around 2 or 3 in the morning, I would hear the sobbing again, louder and more desperate each time. Sometimes it mixed with noises from the storage room, like equipment clattering. I'd go check, my heart racing, only to find nothing. The quiet would swallow me as I walked the dark halls. I was starting to think I was losing it. One night, while I was grabbing coffee in the break room, I saw something in the glass door. It looked like a person standing behind me. I whipped around, but there was nobody there. My skin prickled, and I felt like I was being watched. I convinced myself I was just seeing things. The sobbing got louder after that. Shadows darted just out of view, and when I turned to look, they vanished. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was close, lurking in the corners of the clinic. I was on edge every night. One night, while I was sorting supplies, I heard a voice. It was soft, almost a whisper. "Help me." I turned around, my heart pounding. The room was empty. Just me and the machines humming. But it felt like there was something else, something I couldn't see. Things escalated quickly after that. I started to hear crashing sounds, more whispers, and a feeling that shadows were creeping in around me. The clinic felt alive, and not in a good way. I spent many nights wondering if I was going mad, or if something was really watching me. Then one late night, the sounds reached a peak, a cacophony of terrified moans and clanging. I stood in the middle of the hallway, frozen. I couldn't see anything, but I felt the presence. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, just my imagination. But deep down, I knew something was there. That night, I didn't just feel alone. I felt hunted. I stayed near the front desk, telling myself I had to finish my shift. I thought about running, but even the thought made me shiver. Even now, I still wonder what really haunted that clinic. It's been 8 months, and I can't shake what I saw or what I felt. I still don't understand what watched me. That night, I clocked into my shift, the familiar blend of anxiety and resignation settling in my chest. I took my seat at the front desk, each tick of the clock hanging heavy in the air. I reminded myself it was just another night, but I knew better. About an hour in, the clinic went silent. The kind of silence that wraps around you, making you feel like you're the only one left in the world. I was just about to dive into a stack of paperwork when I heard it. The sobbing. It was back, low and unsettling. My heart quickened as I grabbed my flashlight and pushed myself to investigate. The sound led me down the long hallway where the shadows seemed to flicker at the edges of my vision. I kept my flashlight steady ahead, illuminating the faded words on the old walls. Room 3 was where the sobbing seemed to come from. I hesitated outside the door, the cold handle making my palms sweat. I opened it slowly. The room was dark, and everything appeared as it should. A lone bed, dusty equipment, and the rhythmic beeping of a monitoring machine. But there was no one there. I shined my light around before stepping inside, feeling the chill seep into my bones. I was about to leave when I noticed something on the floor. A small, dusty picture frame was flipped over. I bent down to pick it up. As I turned it over, I froze. It was a photo of a woman, her face familiar but distant. She had a warm smile that cut through the gloom. I felt an inexplicable bond with her, but I couldn't place her. My pulse raced, as in the back of my mind I felt a nagging sense of recognition. The sobbing returned, and this time it sounded different, like a call for help. I jumped back, the frame tumbling from my hands. It shattered. As I stood there, feeling lost in the confusion, the air grew heavy. A shadow flitted past the doorway. I whipped around, but again there was nothing. Then the lights began to flicker, and the temperature dropped sharply. I wanted to leave, but fear anchored me in place. I felt trapped in the darkness, waiting for something to emerge. That's when I saw it. A figure at the end of the hall, partially obscured by shadow. It was the woman from the picture, only now her face was twisted in anguish. "Help me," she whispered again, her voice echoing through the empty corridor. Before I could think, I lunged toward her, but she vanished. Panic surged through me as the sobbing intensified around me, drowning out my thoughts. I turned in circles, the walls seeming to close in. I had to find out who she was, what she wanted. I couldn't face another night without answers, but deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. The clinic held secrets, and she was a part of them. As I stumbled back into the front lobby, breathless, a sense of urgency washed over me. Tomorrow, I would dig deeper. I needed to uncover the history of this place. But as I turned off the desk light, a chilling thought struck me. What if some things were best left hidden? The next day, I arrived at the clinic earlier than usual. My mind wouldn't settle. I could barely think about anything else but the woman from the picture. I needed answers, and I knew that meant digging into the clinic's past. I headed straight to the administrative office, hoping to find some records. After a few minutes of rifling through drawers, I found an old ledger buried beneath stacks of dusty forms. The pages were yellowed, and the writing was barely legible. I flipped through names and dates, trying to find any reference to the woman in the photo. Suddenly, a name caught my eye. Eleanor Hale. The dates matched during a period when the clinic had been in full operation. I felt a twinge in my chest. Was this her? Just then, the door swung open, and Judy, the head nurse, walked in. Her expression was neutral, but I could feel the tension radiating from her. "What are you doing here so early?" I froze, the ledger still open in my hands. "Just looking through some old records." She raised an eyebrow and stepped closer, glancing down at the open page. "Eleanor Hale? That's an old case. Why are you interested in her?" I hesitated. The sobbing echoed in my mind. I had a strange encounter last night. I think I saw her." Judy's face grew serious. "You shouldn't have been wandering the halls at night. There are some stories you don't want to know." Her warning sent chills down my spine. "What happened to her?" I pressed. She sighed, crossing her arms. "Eleanor was a patient here for a long time. She suffered from severe depression. One night, she—" Judy stopped abruptly, looking away as if the words burned her tongue. "She what?" I pushed, feeling both desperate and unsettled. The silence stretched as Judy seemed to wrestle with her thoughts. Finally she spoke, but her voice was barely above a whisper. "She ended her life here. It was tragic. But people say she never left." The pieces started to fit together. I thought back to the sobbing, the way her presence felt both urgent and lost. What if she needs help? What if she wants to tell her story? Judy shook her head, concern etched on her face. "You don't understand. The past is buried for a reason. Some spirits aren't meant to be disturbed." I felt an unsettling mix of determination and dread. I couldn't ignore what had happened. I had to know more. Eleanor's story could explain everything. As I turned to leave the office, Judy called after me. "Be careful. Sometimes it's better to leave the past alone." I nodded, but didn't respond. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had crossed a line. My heart raced, but the urgency to learn more outweighed my fear. I would visit the archives later, but first I needed to gather my thoughts. Just as I stepped into the hallway, the lights flickered, and a cold breeze washed over me. I paused, feeling an unseen presence, one that felt all too familiar. That's when I heard it again, clearer this time. "Help me." It was unmistakably Eleanor's voice. A shiver ran down my spine. I wasn't prepared for what would come next. I felt the air thicken, and I knew I was not alone anymore. The chase was just beginning. I stood frozen in the hallway, the voice echoing in my mind. The chill in the air wrapped around me, squeezing the breath from my lungs. I glanced down both ends of the corridor, half expecting to see Eleanor floating just beyond the flickering light. "Help me." The plea rippled through the silence once more urgent, resonating in my chest like a heartbeat. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had to respond. But how? I took a tentative step forward, straining to listen. "You can't be real," I muttered under my breath, shaking my head. "This can't be happening." Yet, deep down, a part of me felt drawn to this unseen presence. I turned back toward the administrative office, where Judy's warning replayed in my mind. Did I really want to pursue this? I had already crossed a line just by looking into Eleanor's past. But as another gust of cold air brushed past me, I made my decision. I needed to know what had happened. I headed toward the archives, my pulse quickening with each step. The archives were a cramped room at the far end of the clinic, stacked floor to ceiling with boxes and dusty files. I managed to find a dim light switch that flickered to life, casting long shadows across the room. I felt uneasy, the weight of the clinic's history pressing down on me. As I combed through the boxes, I found patient records, therapy logs, and even staff notes from decades ago. Then one file caught my eye. It was a folder labeled Eleanor Hale, Case Notes. My heart stopped for a moment. What if the answers lay within? I opened the folder, flipping through the pages. Most were typed, and some were handwritten notes, all discussing Eleanor's condition. There were details about her therapy sessions, her struggles, and the gradual decline in her mental health. The last entries were hauntingly cryptic. "Hears voices," one note read. "Claims to see a figure in her room at night." My gut twisted. I was on edge as I read further, coming across words that made it clear this wasn't just about a troubled mind. "Explored supernatural phenomenon," another note detailed. "Patient expresses belief in spirits." I was deeper into her life than I had planned. The air felt thicker, like I was being watched. I looked up, scanning the room, half expecting to see Eleanor standing behind me. That's when I noticed something on the last page. It was a small, hastily drawn sketch. A figure, slumped against a wall. The resemblance was uncanny. Suddenly, a loud crash came from somewhere in the archive, breaking my trance. I jumped, my heart racing. I wasn't alone. I dropped the folder and turned toward the sound, dread pooling in my stomach. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice shaking, hardly confident. No response came, just the echo of my own fear. Then I heard the voice again, clearer and sharper this time. "You have to help me." Panic surged through me, a feeling I couldn't shake off. I stepped back, half expecting to see Eleanor emerge from the shadows. But the sight before me was something else entirely. I froze in place. I could make out the shape of a figure, dark and indistinct, hovering near the far wall. It felt like time stood still. My next move would change everything. The figure seemed to pulse with a strange energy, its outline flickering like the dying light overhead. My heart pounded in my ears, drowning out everything else. I could feel the coldness seep deeper into my bones, and dread coiled tightly in my chest. "Who are you?" I whispered, even though I half expected not to get a response. But the shadow only shifted closer, a dark mass that seemed to draw the light from the room. They'd always warned about the old stories, ghosts trapped within the walls of the clinic. I had mocked those tales, thought they were nothing but folklore bred from paranoia. But right now, standing in the musty archive, I was less sure. I glanced to my left and right, looking for a way out. The thought of running flooded my mind, But the voice echoed again, insistent and desperate. "You have to help me." "Help you?" I managed to croak. "Why? What do you need?" For a brief moment there was silence. Then the figure began to take form, a face, pale and pained. It was Eleanor, no doubt about it. My skin crawled, and I took a shaky step back, bumping into a stack of boxes. They teetered, but did not fall, almost as if they were warning me to stay put. "Listen," she began, her voice barely a whisper, yet full of urgency. "You have to find the truth. They didn't believe me. They didn't listen." Each word pressed down on me like a weight. What truth? I felt lost, drowning in questions. I wanted to erase her pain, but I didn't know how. "Help you how?" I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. Eleanor's ghostly figure flickered again, and I caught a glimpse of something behind her. A shadow that loomed larger than her. My breath caught in my throat as I turned my head. A deeper darkness was forming at the edge of the room, slowly inching toward us. Instinct kicked in, and all I could think was to escape. "Please." Eleanor's voice sharpened, fear lacing her tone. "You can't leave. You need to know what happened to me." "Tell me," I shouted, overwhelmed, my heart racing. "What happened to you?" But before she could respond, the dark mass lunged forward, swallowing Eleanor's form. I stumbled back, the air thick and heavy around me. I lost my footing and fell backwards onto the cold floor. Everything went black for a moment. The world stilled, and I felt the oppressive weight of the shadows pressing in on me. My pulse thundered in my ears, and a frantic panic took hold. Then I heard another voice, deeper and more commanding. "Leave this place." In an instant, the lights pulsed back to life, illuminating the archive. The figure was gone, but the feeling of something dark lingered. I scrambled to get up, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I needed to get out, but as I pushed myself off the floor, I noticed something at my feet. It was a small pendant, glinting in the light. A silver locket, familiar yet haunting. It was Eleanor's. I hesitated for a moment, my breath shallow. This was my connection to her, to the truth she begged me to uncover. But before I could decide, the air shifted. I felt eyes on me again, a cold presence edging ever closer. I couldn't wait. I grabbed the locket, my decision made. "Okay, Eleanor, I'll find out what happened." As I turned to leave, a chilling voice rang out, "You shouldn't have come here." A surge of fear shot through me as I dashed for the door, knowing this was only the beginning of something far worse. The hallway stretched before me, dark and foreboding. I could still feel the weight of the shadows behind me as I ran. They were almost tangible. A thick fog that whispered and breathed, waiting to consume me whole. The door to the archive was just behind me now, but its presence felt like a looming threat. I bolted down the corridor, heart hammering. I needed to escape, but my mind raced with what I had just witnessed. Eleanor had been there, her ghost, her desperation. I had to understand what she meant by the truth. Who had harmed her? Why was she still trapped here? My thoughts swirled as I reached the staircase. I hesitated at the first step, glancing back at the door. It stood silently, like a hungry beast waiting for me to venture too close again. But I couldn't stay. I had to find help, or at least someone who could piece this all together. As I descended, I imagined dark shapes lurking just out of sight, waiting for my moment of weakness. I gripped the locket tighter, its coolness grounding me in reality. I had to get to the nurse's station. Maybe Marissa was still there. She had been working late, and she might know something. I reached the first floor and rushed toward the main area, my footsteps echoing in the empty clinic. The fluorescent lights flickered above me intermittently, sending a chill crawling down my spine. The air felt thick, not just from silence, but from something else, an underlying tension that surged every time I moved. When I finally arrived, I found the station deserted. The monitors blinked, casting a dull glow over the room, but no sign of Marissa. A small flicker of panic seized me. I leaned over the desk and pulled out the clinic's logbook, searching for anything unusual that might hint at Eleanor's fate. Most of the entries were mundane, but one caught my eye, an incident report about a patient who had vanished without a trace. I blinked at the date. It matched the time Eleanor had died. The report stated that she had been agitated, claiming someone was after her. My skin prickled. Had she really been warning people about whatever had taken her life? Then a noise caught my attention, a sound not unfamiliar, yet laden with dread. I turned my head in the direction of the sound and saw a shadow moving at the corner of my vision. It flickered out of sight before I could fully register it, but I knew it was there. I froze. My heart raced as I strained to listen closely. There was shuffling now, faint whispers that seeped from the shadows. I stepped back, clutching the locket, remembering Eleanor's plea. "You can't leave." "Marissa!" I called out, my voice trembling. No response. I took a cautious step forward, feeling drawn to the hallway beyond the station. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. They called to me, beckoning me to follow. I had no idea what to expect, but deep down I felt that I had to go, a dark pull that I couldn't ignore. That's when I saw it, a figure emerging from the shadows at the far end of the hall. My breath hitched in my throat. It looked like Eleanor, but there was something off about her, something that made the hair on my neck stand on end. "Help me," the figure mouthed, but this time her voice was garbled, distorted. I knew in my gut this wasn't Eleanor's spirit. I turned to run, but the shadow was already blocking my escape, filling the doorway. Someone or something was watching me, and suddenly I felt utterly trapped. I should have known better than to look back. Fear seized me, a tangible force that wrapped around my throat. My instincts kicked in, and I pivoted, ready to sprint down the hallway. But the darkness had thickened. I felt it pressing against me, an invisible weight that made it hard to breathe. As I turned, I stumbled back against the desk. The cold metal was an unwelcome comfort. My ears buzzed with the whispers that now seemed to echo all around me. They grew more frantic, urgency lacing through each breathy word. I couldn't catch the meaning, but the tone was unmistakable, trapped, desperate, pleading. I squinted into the gloom, trying to discern any detail that could help me, but visibility was shallow. Shapes danced, and the eerie play of light cast every object into the scene of a horror film. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw movement. The shadow rushed closer, consuming everything in its path. "Get away!" I shouted, pushing myself away from the desk with all my strength. The figure, indistinct yet familiar, flinched slightly at the sound. Whatever it was, it hesitated for just a moment. I seized the chance and darted past it, adrenaline surging as I tore down the hallway. I could sense it following, a cold gust of air that whipped at my back. Each echo of my footfalls seemed to taunt me, reminding me of how utterly alone I felt. But fear held me together. I couldn't let it win. I turned a corner sharply, and for a split second the hallway opened into a broader area, a break room. The walls were adorned with outdated posters warning about washing hands and taking breaks. I made a beeline for the back door, the only possible exit. As I fumbled with the handle, a cold breeze swept through, and that damn whispering returned. I clenched my fists, heart racing, ready to burst through the door. "Help me!" the whispers begged again, and I froze, the handle slipping from my grasp. "Rivi!" Just then, the door swung open on its own. I staggered back in shock, staring into the widening darkness beyond the threshold. No one was there, but I felt that same pull from earlier, that urge to step into the unknown. But where would it lead me? To safety or madness? I took a tentative step forward, then pulled back, fear fighting my instinct. What if I was wrong? What if that darkness held secrets I wasn't prepared to face? That's when I caught a familiar glint of silver on the floor, half hidden by the darkness. I crouched down, fingers brushing across the cool, hard surface. It was a small pendant, Eleanor's locket. My breath caught. She'd been here. Why was it back here? Why now? I could hear myself breathing, quick and shallow, like the whispers circling around me. I wanted to understand. I needed to, but the realization hit me hard. I had no idea what was happening. A sudden crash echoed through the break room, and I jerked my head up. Something was coming, and it was close. I needed to make a choice. Confront the darkness waiting behind me, or confront the truth in front of me. Then everything went dark. I blinked, trying to adjust to the pitch blackness that surrounded me. My heart raced at the loss of sight. I reached out, hands brushing against the walls around me, searching for something solid to ground myself. The stillness felt alive, vibrated with an energy that was both unsettling and electric. The whispers faded, replaced by an intimidating silence, but I could still feel the weight of unseen eyes pressing into my skin. I took a breath. Was that a mistake? The air tasted stale, as if it hadn't moved in ages. I forced myself to remember the locket, clutching it tightly in my palm, a piece of reality amidst the uncertainty. Then, a flicker of light pierced through the darkness, a small sliver illuminating the edges of the break room door. My pulse quickened with cautious hope. Maybe it was a way out, or possibly someone had come to help. I started toward it, each step feeling heavier than the last. I reached the door, pausing to listen. The air shifted again. I could hear them, breathy murmurs, words jumbled together, but this time they felt different. More familiar, or was it just my imagination playing tricks? I leaned my ear closer, straining to decipher what they were saying. The urgency returned, growing louder, calling me by name. Ella, Ella. The voice was soft, but insistent, as if it knew me. "Who's there?" I called, but there was no response. The light flickered again, drawing me further into its glow. I couldn't resist. I pushed the door open, just wide enough to squeeze through, the chill of the break room contrasting starkly with the heat of my fear. As I stepped into the light, I realized I was not alone. The break room was empty, but scattered about were remnants of a struggle. Overturned chairs, a shattered mug, and the dim silhouette of a figure slumped against the far wall. My breath caught as instinct screamed at me to retreat. "Please," it whispered, a raspy plea that echoed through the room. I took a cautious step forward, curiosity battling with dread. The figure shifted, and as my eyes adjusted to the dim light, I recognized the familiar features of Eleanor. "Eleanor?" I gasped. I rushed to her side, my heart racing with a rush of conflicting emotions. "What happened? Where did you go?" But as I crouched beside her, a deep chill ran down my spine. She looked different, hollowed cheeks, vacant eyes. A faint smile curled her lips, but it was empty, devoid of the warmth I remembered. "Help me escape," she said, and suddenly the whispering returned, swarming like angry bees. I felt the locket digging painfully into my palm and glanced down at it, conflicted. "What's keeping you here?" I asked, trembling. "What do you mean?" Her gaze shifted towards the wall behind me, and my heart sank. I could sense movement, shadows bending and contorting as if something was shifting just outside my view. Adrenaline surged through me. Then I heard it, a low, guttural growl resonating from the depths of the break room, vibrating my bones. I whipped around, panic clawing at my throat. The darkness was not done with me yet. Someone, or something, was in the shadows, and it was coming closer. I stepped back, feeling the cold wall against my spine, a reminder of my real surroundings. The shadows twisted, wrapping around me like a dark wool blanket. Eleanor's rasping voice faded into the background, replaced by the deafening thrum of my heart. "Ella, please," she pleaded again, her tone urgent. But I couldn't answer. The growl was louder now, deep and unfathomable, reverberating through the break room like a threat. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my feet felt glued to the floor. The shadows coalesced into something more defining, a hulking figure emerging from the darkness, its outline indiscernible but intimidating. I held my breath, too scared to move. "Get away from her!" I shouted, hoping the words carried some weight. The figure paused, then shifted towards me, revealing an aspect of its form. A gaping maw filled with teeth and hollow eyes that glowed in the dark. Panic surged through me, slicing through the paralysis. I turned back to Eleanor, but she was no longer there. My throat tightened as if the air around me had thickened. The only thing left behind was the locket, which fell from my clammy hands, landing with a hollow clink on the floor. Suddenly, the shadows writhed like serpents, snaking towards me, tendrils of darkness reaching out as if to pull me in. I lunged for the locket, desperate to reclaim the single link to my reality. As I grabbed it, warmth flooded through my fingers, a stark contrast to the cold that surrounded me. But it wasn't enough. Panic washed over me, a wave threatening to drown my sanity. I had to move. Ignoring the figure and its growl, I sprinted for the door at the opposite end of the break room, the echoes of my shoes slapping against the floor punctuating the silence. I reached the door and flung it open, bursting into the hallway beyond. Bright fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a harsh glare. It took me a moment to realize the hallway was empty, an eerie silence settling around me. I turned back, expecting to see the figure looming in the doorway, but the break room was dark again, as if it had never been disturbed. Shaking, I focused on catching my breath. I didn't want to go back in there. What had happened to Eleanor? Then, from the end of the corridor, I spotted a flicker of movement, more shadows creeping around the corners. My breath hitched. Had it followed me? I felt a chill creep down my spine, fear urging me to run. But where could I go? The exit was too far away. That's when I noticed something out of place, a door barely ajar, with a faint light spilling through the crack. Should I risk it? Suddenly, the growl shouted from the break room again, sending shockwaves through my body. I didn't have time to think. I bolted for the door, adrenaline propelling me forward, and flung it open. Inside, I found a stairwell leading down. My mind buzzed with questions. What was lurking behind me? Why was Eleanor trapped? Did I even stand a chance? I descended, each step fueled by fear. As I reached the bottom, I heard whispers again, this time clearer, but still laced with despair. "Help us! Ella!" And I realized the darkness wasn't just watching me, it was calling to me. What had I just stepped into? The air was thick in the stairwell, laden with a strange combination of mold and something bitterly sweet. Each step echoed against the concrete walls, reverberating in my ears as the whispers grew louder, wrapping around me like cold fingers. I clutched Eleanor's locket, its metal still warm against my palm, reminding me of the urgency pulsing through me, the urgency to help her, to help the other lost souls seemingly trapped within the clinic's walls. I reached the bottom, the light flickering above me like a dying star. I hesitated, feeling that the darkness held more than just a threat. It radiated an undeniable desperation. "Help us, Ella." The voices called again, chilling me to the bone. My resolve solidified. This was my chance, my choice, either to succumb to fear or confront the darkness that hung over this place. I took a deep breath and stepped into the dimly lit room at the bottom of the stairs. It was a storage area, filled with old equipment and dusty supplies, but the atmosphere was charged with energy as though the stale air was waiting, expecting something from me. Shadows flitted just out of sight, but something anchored me to the spot. A sense of purpose combined with dread. Then, from the corner of my eye, I spotted movement. A sliver of light danced in the dark, revealing a tattered banner draped over a stack of boxes. I approached it cautiously, intrigued. The words were barely readable, but spoke of remembrance. To our lost souls. The reminder that others had suffered here ushered in a wave of determination. "Eleanor, are you here?" I called softly, willing my voice to cut through the looming shadows. There was nothing but silence in response, the chill pressing against me as if daring me. Yet I sensed a presence lingering, just beyond my vision, coiling in the depths of the darkness. Then I heard a click. Something unlocked in the distance. My heart raced as I turned, finding a door ajar, a dim light spilling from its crevice. Compelled, I moved toward it, my pulse echoing in my ears. As I pushed the door open, I was greeted by a room unlike the others. The walls were adorned with photographs, memories captured in grainy black and white. They depicted patients, staff, families, smiles, tears, life. And then, my breath caught in my throat. Among the framed stories, there she was, Eleanor, vibrant and alive in one of the images, arms wrapped around a child with a bright smile. A flood of emotion washed over me. This was who she had been, before pain consumed her, before she had become a whisper in the dark. I stepped closer, studying the photograph as icy fingers brushed against my back. "Help me," echoed through the room again, but this time it was clearer, filled with anguish. "Eleanor!" I gasped, turning, ready to confront whatever lurked behind me. The shadows gathered, shifting menace around my feet. Fear tried to seize me, but I stood firm, heart hammering against my ribcage. "What do you need from me?" The shadows coiled tighter, and a cold gust surged past me, rattling the photographs. I felt a rush of wind, a desperate plea like an invocation to the past. Out of the dark emerged a vision, once again Eleanor's tortured face. "Find the truth! Set us free! They need to know!" "Who needs to know?" My voice trembled, but was filled with defiance. But her figure faded as if her strength waned, replaced by the growl echoing through the room once more, reverberating with anguish and anger. This time, it felt louder, more aggressive, and I knew it wasn't going to let me leave unscathed. With a surge of adrenaline, I turned to the pictures, frantically searching for something, clues, names, anything that could unravel the anguish that bound her. The chilling presence behind me grew more aggressive, tendrils of shadow reaching forth, demanding my fear. Just then, my fingers landed on a folder hidden beneath an overturned chair. Trembling, I pried it free, quickly flipping through photos, notes, and reports. As I skimmed the contents, a note caught my eye, filled with scribbled annotations. Eleanor Hale, accused of fabrication, claims of spirits after her. My heart sank at the words. Those who had believed her had been silenced. "This place," I whispered, rage igniting within me. "You were unheard." I locked eyes with Eleanor's fading form, radiating anguish. She was pinned by something deeper, a sense of betrayal. "I will find out. I won't let them forget you." Just as I proclaimed my vow, the growl escalated into a roar that reverberated across the room, and the shadows lurched forward with an insatiable wrath. I bolted toward the door, slipping through the opening just as an icy tendril snagged my ankle. Heart racing, I dashed back up the stairs, the figure from the darkness pursuing me, whispering threats that echoed in my head. I could feel Eleanor's locket clutched in my fist, its warmth a reminder, a lifeline in the overwhelming darkness. As I burst into the main floor, the clinic lay quiet, but the sense of dread didn't fade. I darted toward the exit, my heart pounding louder than our shrieks, grounding me. Behind me, the growl morphed into a wail, haunting yet insistent, fueling my drive to escape. I had to survive to reveal the truth. Just as I reached the front door, it swung open. Marissa stood there, her eyes wide with shock. What happened? I heard noises. "Let me out!" I cried, barreling past her and into the night beyond as tendrils of darkness clawed at my heels. I stumbled into the fresh air, gasping, the chilling night wrapping around me like a shroud. I turned back to find the building looming behind me, the windows dark like a hollowed husk. As I caught my breath, a wave of realization cascaded through me. The mystery remained, but I had the truth, and the truth was powerful. I wouldn't let Eleanor's suffering go unacknowledged. My resolve had solidified. This was not over. Though I may never understand everything that had happened within those walls, one enduring question hung over me like a specter. What awaited those who ventured into the clinic next? I was out for now, but deep inside, I knew this wasn't merely an end. It was just the beginning.